My name is Simpson, the happiness engineer, along with my co-host, Mr. Paul Hoyt, and together we are curing racism. We are examining your commonly accepted beliefs that lead to your unconscious behavioral biases. Paul, how are you doing today, my brother?
I'm doing really well. Thanks very much. It's an exciting day. I'm always glad to be able to show up on Wednesdays and send a few messages of encouragement and inspiration and support to those people who believe what we believe, that the differences that we see that some people think are really significant are really quite superficial. And that when we learn to see through those superficial differences that divide us, we will discover the common values that unite us.
Yes, sir. Yes, sir. And unfortunately, right, our commonly accepted biases usually are things that were once enforced by law, which
Mm.
just becomes, an inherent reflex for some people until they are taught differently, until they see things differently. One of the things that I encourage everyone to do is to travel outside of your neighborhood, to travel outside of your local community so that you can have a more well rounded understanding of life, right? If you can go to other places. I still remember uh, one of my first weeks at Lehigh University, and someone heard that I was from Harlem, and they were like, "What's that, like a third world country?" I'm like, man, I'm like, it's not half as violent as it is portrayed. It is probably one of the biggest small neighborhoods in the world, right? Because it's part of New York City, which is a large city. But if you are doing anything of note, everyone will know your name.
I love it. I love it. I think that that's real important, and that's it dives into the topic of today, which is education. And education can come in a lot of different ways. It can come in formal education that you go to some school or college or training program or trade school. It can come in terms of the research that you do yourself. And with the internet, today and social media and artificial intelligence, man, we can discover all kinds of things just by asking good questions. And it can come through life experience too. Like you say, journeying, going to Europe, going to Africa, going to just places outside your own community and getting exposed to other cultures and other mindsets and other perspectives. So education, is really, really important. Knowledge is the fundamental resource that we use to become a wise person. We look at things, we decide what is true, and then we can incorporate that into our understanding and our beliefs and our experiences and become wiser people.
And I think education is very key to elevation. One of the four essential elements that I say to success is education, employment, entrepreneurship, and emotional support. And that includes mental health, right? Which is something, especially in my community, we don't talk enough about, right?
Hmm.
Mental health. There are many people who are dealing with mental health struggles based on poverty. People don't understand that in poverty, you deal with a lot of PTSD, right? Because there are experiences that you have that are actually similar to what others may have on the battlefield,
Yeah.
right? There are experiences in poverty where you may see someone die. One of the things that I talk about was there was a point in my life where I literally lost a friend every week for about 5 years, right?
Wow.
We lost a friend to the streets, whether it was to drug use, drug selling, or gun violence, right? We lost someone. And it was always so near and dear. Our first one being my friend Pop when we were just 13 years old, right? So the experience in which we learned and the things in which we chose, growing up in Harlem, my experience with education was a lot different, and many of us that grew up in our generation in Harlem gave up on education and a lot of things behind the Central Park Five, right?
Yep.
Uh, Antoine was a good friend of mine. We actually were in middle school together when that happened. So education is something that saved my life because I was able to go away to prep school when all of the turmoil was happening, right? We were in the midst of seeing our friends not only be jailed and incarcerated and convicted of a crime they did not commit, we all also felt victimized because we knew that that could have happened to any one of us,
Yeah.
right? Any one of us.
So I think you make a couple of really good points there. One of the points is that education has long been known to be a path out of poverty. When we have a degree, a high school degree, a college degree, a graduate degree, it opens up opportunities to us that people who don't have those degrees really don't ever have, and those opportunities to earn what we're able to earn to lift ourselves out of poverty. That's a really, really good point, and a really, really good reason for young people to continue their educations. The other one that you mentioned is to get away from an environment, from your home environment. A lot of times I think that people don't recognize mental illness because they were raised around mental illness. If they're raised in an abusive and cruel and angry environment, they think that that's normal. That's just the way that everybody's household is, and they believe, subconsciously that that's the way that they should behave when they get to be an adult too, because that's the way that strong people react. They are angry, they're abusive, they're cruel all the time. So that's what I need to do when I get to be that age. And removing yourself from those environments, getting in environments that are much more stable, much more emotionally regulated environments can be an invaluable education, and to support you in your own quest for emotional intelligence.
Yes. And education, when you'll find, and I've been blessed and I've been lucky, and I'm going to say this because you will find that most people that look like me won't have my experience, right? So outside of having a prep school education, I was blessed to have teachers that look like me,
Mm,
right? That is important a lot of times for young kids to actually understand education, right? To have a superhero that looks like you, to have a teacher that looks like you allows you to understand more. It's not something that people who are not black and brown think about as much because they are the leaders of education. But I was blessed to have Miss Joyce Duncan as our principal when I was in middle school. So not only did we have school teachers, that were leaders in education. Our school principal were leaders in education. When you do the ACEs test, which is one of the tests that shows your aptitude, right, uh, uh, to adjust and adapt into society. One of the things they ask you is about the teachers that you have and how many of those teachers actually lived your experience or looked like you, right? It was important, even in prep school. And it's so funny because you would think in a prep school that I wouldn't have had teachers that looked like me, especially when I was the first black male to enter that school. By the time I graduated, they had a few teachers that came through that school that looked like me, mostly female, but still someone that I could relate to,
Yeah.
right? And I want us to understand that because it's not that most people won't learn, it's that they don't relate to what they're learning until later on in life. I have seen some of the greatest drug dealers come home from prison after they found their way to education, right? Because education doesn't stop in school. Once they found, right, that their way to learning, they found how to not only be productive parts of this society, but realize what they cheated themselves out of at a young age. But if I can't relate to my teacher, a lot of times it is hard for me to learn.
Amen to that. I love the subject of role models being very important and having an environment that you're in that encourages and supports a growth mindset of you believing that, hey, I can learn this. Hey, I can develop this habit. I can grow in ways that benefit me and my family. That is really important, and having role models is incredibly important too. One of the things that a formal education gives you also is connections. I was blessed to have both of my kids go to Stanford University, and some of the connections they got there are incredible, like the chief technology officer of Microsoft and the chief technology officer of Twitter when it was really Twitter, and so many other great people that they had an opportunity to study with and to work with that gave them the connections that really facilitated their career. So that's back to the subject of the environment that formal education environments provide to you, the great support, the encouragement, the connection, the role models. That's in addition to the information, in addition to the knowledge that you gain, that you can apply to develop your skills, to develop your talents. It is also that emotional regulation, those role models, and those connections that can support you in life in great ways. Oops, we lost you, Paz. I don't know if this is live stream is still going or not. If it is, I'm sure that Paz will join us back and I will carry on for just a minute or
Can you
two.
see me?
I cannot see you, but I did hear you. You are you are there you are. Now you're coming back on.
There you go. Can you see me? Technology can be a hoot sometimes.
I hope that you can't get
Yes.
through. Cool. Well,
But
encourage everybody. Let us encourage everybody to continue their education in whatever way that they want. In terms of formal education, by actually going to a college or a university and getting the heck out of your home environment, or your current environment, wherever that happens to be. Continue your education through virtual classrooms and online courses. Continue your education through internet research, especially in this world of artificial intelligence, and continue your education by purposefully exposing yourself to other cultures and other environments, to reach out to people who don't look like you, talk like you, dress like you, eat the same foods, and get to know them. Because when you do that, you will begin to see through those superficial differences that divide us and discover the common values that unite us.
Yes, yes. As I think about my education and really the blessing that I had, because I think that it's important to distinguish, right? That formal education, like you said, with your kids, gave us these amazing connections, right? But the education that I learned in the streets is what keeps me sharp and keeps me safe,
Yeah.
right? There is a I used to be I was blessed. One of the things we used to laugh about, which was an unfortunate situation, but it was my truth. The kids at Lehigh would ask me where I would go for spring break. And I would always tell them, I'm going to UCLA. And they'll go, you're going to California? I'm like, no, I'm going to University at the corner of Lexington Avenue. I need to sell drugs in order to get back here next semester. Like, I don't, like, my reality was my reality. I had my son early, my oldest son, my 31-year-old, and we we had bills to pay, and we would laugh, but I would come home during those breaks and I would tell my friends who were on the corners with me, having to go through the struggle, that you were smarter than at least everyone that I went to school with. The difference was the opportunity that you were given. You know, I was blessed because I had a mother who fought very hard for me, that she turned my shit into sugar, right? So I would still be able to benefit off of anything because she would never let me fail. Thank you, Alicia Gowdy. You know, um, but for most kids, that wasn't the same. So, you know, it wasn't that they, and I would tell them, you're so much smarter because you would have to manage people, you would have to count money, you would have to deal with distribution and all of these things. And if you went wrong, that could mean your life, especially in the 90s, 80s, early 2000s, right? One A miscalculation may not allow you to come home. A misdeal may cost you your life. So the stakes was so much higher in the education that they were given. And then if you and then one misturn can even be worse. If you don't die, you still go to jail. I have friends who are coming home from doing 25,
Wow.
26, 27 years for things that we now consider legal, selling marijuana. You know, it's different and difficult for those people to understand when they come home from all of that time, that what they've lost, 2 decades of their life to, is something that they can walk into a corner store and get in California, walk into a corner store and get in New York. But education and opportunity changes a lot of things. You can learn a lot, but it doesn't matter if no one will give you a cosign to go into the room. One of the things that I can always say, it's not what you know, it's who you know. Because if you know everything and no one believes you, no one cares. Let me say that for someone again out there, because we're curing racism, right? There is some young genius somewhere in some corner that you don't believe right now, because he's coming from, or she's coming from, a terrible environment. She's coming from a broken home. They are learning from their home on their phone because they don't even have access to internet, and they have taught themselves the world. And because they didn't know you today, because they weren't in the right room yesterday, they are being ignored. There's genius all around you. There's genius that is being missed because the opportunities in which they came into the room may be different. One of the reasons I wear my do-rag everywhere is because I realize I get into rooms that other people can't get into. I
Oops, your
didn't.
mic just went off, Paz.
You can't hear me?
Now it went off when
Let's
you
try
did the
this.
drag thing. Now
Hold
we can.
on. Hold on. Let's try.
No, we can hear
We're
you.
gonna try something different. Give me a moment.
Now you froze on us. Paz is frozen. I'm going to carry on. I don't know if the restream will carry on or not, but we're about ready to close up this conversation about the value of education in so many ways. Formal education, self-taught courses and things that you can do online. The education of the street can be a wonderful thing as well. Um,
Yeah.
Paz is back with us. Paz, we got you on twice, but we can only hear you on one of
You
them.
got me on twice. Let's see if we can figure that out.
For today, I think.
There we go.
I
So,
yeah, we're getting closer.
yeah, we're
Anyway,
getting closer. We've had some technical difficulties today, but it's okay. Um, what I was saying is, first of all, education doesn't stop in a classroom. Second of all, opportunities can happen for anyone if you open up your doors and open up your heart. There's someone right now who you may have missed their genius because they didn't come into the doors the same way. They didn't come into the room the same way. They may have had to crawl into the room instead of walking. They may have had to sneak into the window instead of through the door, but they belong in that room. You know, we spend so much time misjudging people based on our education and our opportunities that we may miss like someone to truly love.
love it. If you think a conversation about racism, the causes and the cures of it would be helpful to your organization, your corporation, your company, your community organization, kindly reach out to us. Go to curingracism.com and send us a little message. We'll get right back to you. We'd love to come have a workshop with you, do a strategy session, and do what we can to make this world a better place by helping people see through those superficial differences and discover those common values that can unite us and make this world a better place for generations to come.
And make sure you get a copy of the book while you're waiting and waiting for Paul or I to come to your place of business, your establishment, your nonprofit. You know, please get a copy of the book so that you have a manuscript that allows you to be able to make this world a better place with us. We all deserve to smile and we all deserve some love. Together, we can start curing racism.
Amen. Great conversation, Paz. God bless. We look forward to seeing you and talking to you next week.
Yes, sir. Have a blessed day.